You know that feeling? When you're trying to keep up with everything, scrolling through news, maybe juggling a bunch of articles,
Yeah.
but it just feels like, I don't know, this massive wave of info crashing over you.
Yeah, it's overwhelming sometimes.
Exactly. And you just wish, like, there was a shortcut, something to get straight to the important stuff without the headache.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's kind of what we're aiming for today. We're going to take a deep dive into something that quietly keeps a lot of organizations running smoothly.
We're digging into ISO 22301.201 today.
Which sounds very official.
Hmm.
Alphabet soup, maybe.
Huh. It does a bit, yeah. But stick with us. It's actually the global standard for something super important. A business continuity management system, or BCMS.
Okay, BCMS. So what's that in plain English?
Think of it as the organization's playbook for when things go wrong. You know, a cyber attack, a flood, maybe a massive supply chain issue, anything unexpected, really.
Right.
It's the framework that helps them keep delivering products or services even when, well, chaos hits. It's all about resilience.
Gotcha. And for this deep dive, we're not just reading summaries. We've got the actual standard, right? The ISO 22301.2019 document itself.
That's right, straight from the source. This lays out the actual requirements. What an organization has to do to get certified, it's the blueprint for building and continually improving that BCMS.
Okay, but why should someone listening care about this ISO thing? It sounds a bit technical.
A fair question, but think about it. You interact with tons of organizations every single day. Your job, your bank, the supermarket, essential services.
Pretty much everything.
Exactly. So understanding ISO 22301 gives you like a peek behind the curtain. It shows you how these places are actively working to make sure they don't just collapse when something bad happens.
So it's about their resilience, which affects us.
Totally. And it's not just for giant corporations. The standard's designed to work for any organization, big or small, no matter what they do.
Okay, that makes sense. So our mission then for this deep dive.
Let's unpack the core ideas, the real benefits of ISO 22301.2019. Make it clear, make it insightful, and skip the confusing jargon.
Sounds good. Let's dive in. What's the fundamental point of ISO 22301, like its main goal?
Okay, so at its heart, it specifies the structure and the requirements needed to set up a solid BCMS. It's like giving you the recipe and the ingredients for resilience.
Right.
It guides organizations to develop continuity plans that are appropriate for the kinds of impacts they might face, but
Right.
it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all deal.
Yeah, I was going to say, a small coffee shop's worries are different from, say, a huge hospital's.
Exactly. The standard totally gets that. What counts as appropriate continuity varies wildly. The ISO document itself mentions that the results, the outcomes of a BCMS, depend on loads of things.
Like what?
Well, legal stuff, regulations, industry standards, the actual products and services they offer, how they work internally, their size, their structure, and really importantly, the needs of their interested party.
Interested parties.
Oh,
Okay, that sounds potentially
yeah.
broad. Who counts?
It is broad, and intentionally so. The standard defines an interested party as basically anyone or any organization that can be affected by, or even just think they're affected by something the organization does.
No, customers, employees.
Yep, customers, definitely. Owners, shareholders, employees, suppliers, regulators, even the local community, maybe. If there's an environmental risk or something, it's a wide net.
Okay, that helps clarify.
Yeah.
So, considering all these different people and factors, why bother? What's the actual payoff for an organization implementing this standard? What benefits do they get?
The standard itself lays out quite a few key advantages. From a pure business angle, a good BCMS supports their big picture strategic goals. It can even be a competitive edge.
How so?
Well, imagine you're choosing between two suppliers. One is ISO 23301 certified, proving they have solid plans for continuity. The other, maybe not. Who do you trust more if things get dicey?
Yeah, good point. It's a signal of reliability.
Exactly. It protects their reputation, builds credibility, and ultimately it just makes the whole organization more resilient, better able to bounce back and adapt.
Makes sense. What about the financial side? Does it save money?
Oh, absolutely. Financially, it can seriously reduce legal and money risks. Being prepared means fewer fines, fewer lawsuits if things go wrong,
Okay.
and it cuts down on the actual costs of disruption, lost sales, recovery expenses, damaged stuff. A good BCMS aims to minimize all that financial pain.
And going back to those interested parties, the customers, employees, etc., how does it help them directly?
Well, for them, it's about reassurance, isn't it? It shows the organization is actively trying to protect things that matter, maybe their data, maybe the environment, or just making sure the service they need keeps running.
Right. It's not just about the company saving itself.
No, it shows they're thinking broader. It builds trust, gives confidence that the organization can handle bumps in the road. That's good for everyone.
Internally, within the company.
Internally, it just makes them better at operating during a disruption. It forces them to look hard at their processes, find weak spots. It's proactive risk management, which makes things run smoother overall, not just in a crisis.
It sounds like a really thorough approach. Now, the standard mentions the Plan Do Check Act cycle, PDCA. What's that about?
PDCA. Yeah, that's like the engine driving this whole thing. It's fundamental to ISO 22301 and lots of other management standards. It's all about continuous improvement.
Okay, break it down. Plan.
Plan is where you figure out your goals for business continuity and the steps needed to get there. So, identifying risks, setting clear objectives, mapping out the how. It's the strategy phase.
Got it. Then the DO is doing it.
Pretty much. DO is implementing and operating everything you planned, running the processes, using the solutions. It's putting the plans into action both day to day and when an actual disruption hits.
Check sounds like evaluation, testing, audits.
Exactly. Check is monitoring and reviewing how well the BCMS is working, running exercises, doing internal audits to make sure you're meeting the standards rules, measuring progress against your goals.
And act. Fixing things.
Act is taking action based on what you learned in check. If you find problems, what the standard calls nonconformities, or see ways to improve, you fix them. You take corrective action.
So it's not just fixing mistakes, but actively improving.
Right. It's about constantly enhancing the whole system. And using PDCA keeps it consistent with other management standards, which helps organizations juggling multiple systems. It keeps the BCMS alive and evolving.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a cycle, not a one-off task. Now, the ISO document itself, it's structured in clauses, right? 4 through 10 seem key. Can we walk through those?
Sure. Clause 4 is context of the organization. This is foundational. Understand yourself, internal strengths, weaknesses, and the outside world external factors affecting continuity.
So knowing your playing field.
Exactly. Plus, understanding those interested parties' needs and expectations, including legal requirements. And then, based on all that, defining the scope of the BCMS. What parts of the business are covered? You need to be specific.
Okay, got to know yourself first. What's clause 5?
Clause 5 is leadership. Crucial stuff. Top management has to be committed. They need to establish the business continuity policy, communicate it, define who's responsible for what. Without leadership buy-in, it just won't stick.
Makes sense. The bosses need to be on board. Clause 6.
Clause 6 is planning. This is where you identify risks and opportunities related to continuity. You set specific, measurable continuity objectives and then plan how to achieve them. It also covers planning for changes to the BCMS itself, thinking ahead.
Proactive, not reactive. Then clause 7, support. What kind of support?
Support covers all the resources needed, people with the right skills, competence, ensuring awareness across the organization, having the right infrastructure, establishing communication processes, especially for crises, and a big one, managing documented information, policies, plans, procedures, records of tests, all the info needed to run and prove the BCMS is working. It needs to be controlled, maintained, accessible.
Right, you need the actual written plans and proof. What about clause 8? Sounds important.
Clause 8 is operation. This is where the rubber meets the road. Planning and controlling operations with continuity in mind. Conducting that business impact analysis, the BIA, and risk assessments.
The BIA. Tell me more about that.
The BIA is key. It's about analyzing how disruptions would impact critical activities over time. Which processes absolutely must keep running? What happens if they stop? How quickly do they need to be back?
So it identifies the absolute must-haves.
Precisely. And that feeds the risk assessment, figuring out what threats could actually cause those disruptions. Based on the BIA and risk assessment, Clause 8 requires you to establish continuity strategies and solutions. The how. What will you actually do? What resources do you need? Then, developing detailed business continuity plans and procedures. Step-by-step guides for responding, communicating, recovering.
Like a script for a crisis.
Kind of, yeah. And crucially, Clause 8 mandates an exercise program. You have to test these plans regularly, fire drills, simulations, make sure they actually work and people know their roles. Plus, evaluating all the documentation and capabilities regularly.
Lots of testing and checking. Okay, Clause 9.
Clause 9 is performance evaluation. This is stepping back to see how the whole BCMS is doing, monitoring, measuring, analyzing. It includes doing internal audits, those systematic checks against the standard and your own goals.
The self-check you mentioned.
Right. And also management review, where top leadership formally assesses the BCMS's performance and suitability. Remember, internal audits are the self-check. External audits are usually by third parties for certification.
Got it. And finally, Clause 10.
Clause 10 is improvement. This is about fixing things that aren't right, addressing those nonconformities we talked about, taking corrective action to prevent problems from happening again.
Okay.
But it's broader, too. It emphasizes continual improvement as an ongoing activity, always looking for ways to make the BCMS better, more effective, more adapted to changes.
It really circles back to that PDCA cycle, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It closes the loop.
And you mentioned earlier, getting the definitions right is important, too.
Hugely important. Like, business continuity isn't just keeping going. The standard defines it as the capability to continue delivery within acceptable times and at predefined capacity during a disruption. Specific.
Okay. And resilience.
Resilience is the ability to absorb and adapt in a changing environment, to meet objectives, survive, and prosper. It's about adaptability.
And impact.
Impact is simply the consequence of something happening, an event on achieving your objectives. Understanding these precise terms is key to applying the standard correctly.
All right, so wrapping this up, what's the single biggest takeaway from digging into ISO 22301?
I'd say it's that ISO 22301 provides this incredibly robust, internationally recognized framework for building real organizational resilience. It's not just about disaster recovery plans sitting on a shelf.
It's more active than that.
Way more active. It's proactive planning, solid processes, and that constant drive to improve so organizations can genuinely weather storms and keep delivering what they promise.
And for our listeners, why does this matter in their everyday life again? Remind us.
Because it gives you insight into the hidden work organizations do to stay reliable. Your bank, your employer, your utility company, they're likely using these principles, guided by standards like 22301, to make sure they can keep serving you even when things get tough.
So the stability we often just expect, it's not accidental.
Not at all. It's planned, it's tested, it's managed. It's a real commitment to resilience that affects your peace of mind, whether you realize it or not.
That's a powerful thought. So maybe a final thing for listeners to consider. As you go about your week, think about those organizations you rely on. Your workplace, essential services. How might these business continuity principles be working behind the scenes to keep things stable for you?
Yeah, consider the hidden efforts ensuring reliability when the unexpected happens. It's often taken for granted, but it's significant.
Definitely something to ponder. And remember, this deep dive is just scratching the surface. If organizational resilience or these ISO standards have sparked your interest, there's definitely more to explore out there.